So first off, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now that's taking people's attention, from the COVID-19 crisis, the economic crisis here in Lebanon. Now we have the protests in the US and the protests that are still in Lebanon. So thank you for taking the time to come and join us to speak about mobility, which is also a very important issue because it's linked to many other aspects of society. It's linked to economic opportunity, public safety. It's a human rights issue. So today we want to take this opportunity to talk about mobility and how transportation systems in Lebanon and around the world have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis, how the systems might change as a result of the crisis, and what we can expect in the future. And by the way, I'm not Lebanese, but I am a user of the public transportation system in Lebanon. So this is also relevant to me. And I'm very happy to have such an experienced and distinguished panel with us here today. So first, we're very happy to have with us today Mr. Mohammad Mazghani, the Secretary General of UITP, which is the International Association of Public Transport. UITP gathers 1,700 public transport companies, authorities, and supplying industries from 100 countries. It covers metros, tramways, buses, taxis, and shared and on-demand services. Okay, I'm Tismao.
Yes, thank you for the introduction.
Most welcome. Then we have again Mr. Tamam. Should I repeat or? Well, anyway, I didn't finish with his introduction yet.
Yes, yes.
So, he's a transport systems expert who has worked all over the MENA for the last 25 years. He's contributed to major transport system studies for Lebanon. He represents the Federation for Lebanese Engineers at the Lebanese National Committee on Traffic Safety and at the Transport Committee of the Arab Federation of Engineers. He was previously vice chairman and member of the executive board of UITP for the MENA region. Next, we have with us Ms. Sylvana Lakkis, who is the acting president of the Lebanese Union for People with Physical Disabilities, with which she's been active since 1986. She's also the second vice president and chairperson of the Arab Regional Bureau for Disabled Peoples International. She was one of the founders of the Arab Forum for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, of which she's currently the chair, and she's provided consultations to many government ministries, including the Ministry of Public Works and Transportation, on disability issues and inclusion. And we have with us, of course, Mr. Chadi Faraj, who is a human rights activist and has worked on mobility issues. He studied telecom engineering and worked as a senior software developer. And in 2015, he co-founded the Bus Map project to map Lebanon's informal bus system. In 2019, he co-founded Riders' Rights, a civil society organization working on mobility issues. And he wanted me to mention that he is a car-free person, so he does not have a car.
Thank you.
Finally, last but not least, we have Carlos. I hope he'll be able to join us.
I hope so.
Who is the president of Train, an NGO advocating for Lebanese railway rehabilitation and railway heritage preservation. He's a crisis management consultant and lecturer at several public and private universities in Lebanon, and a PhD candidate at Lebanese University in the research field of Syrian refugees, education, crisis management. So thank you all for being with us today. And thank you for our audience members who've joined us. So I'm going to start off with the first round of questions for each of you, and then the second half we'll open it up to be a little bit more interactive. But I would like to first just ask Mr. Mazghani to speak a bit generally about how the COVID-19 situation has affected public transportation systems around the world, the different approaches that different systems and governments have taken to dealing with the crisis, and what the effects have been until now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for the introduction. of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has put more than 4 billion people in lockdown, with mobility limited considerably. It has impacted the public transport networks drastically. So the impact has resulted in a decrease of ridership. In some cities, it surpasses 90%. It means that the public transport company are have been carrying only 5 to 10% of the usual ridership. And of course, it has an impact on the decrease of fare box revenues. In addition to that, the companies had to incur additional costs needed to disinfect and implement physical distancing measures in public transport vehicles and in the stations. And also some of them, they have waived fares to help riders during the crisis. And this, of course, this loss in revenues and this additional cost will have lasting repercussions on transit budgets. It also impacted the supplying industry, those who are manufacturing buses and trains and IT systems, etc., with the reduction in industrial and service production, because some of them had to close their factories. And it has unfortunately provoked the death and the infection among public transport workers. So during the lockdown, public transport services have been maintained in most of the cities, most of the countries, despite the reduction of travel demand. And this to ensure the distancing while keeping also the service continuity to serve the essential workers and the healthcare personnel. So in other words, this coronavirus crisis has proven how fundamental to city public transport really is. Now most countries have started progressively lifting the lockdown and to swiftly resume operation. And generally speaking, the government have called citizens and businesses to limit mobility and limit crowds in public transport systems. For example, by encouraging teleworking, by staggering working hours, by postponing the reopening of schools, universities, also restaurants and bars in many cities are still closed, and also by imposing strict rules regarding shops and malls. And what we observe is that in many cities, these measures have been accompanied by the development of bike lanes and the decision to dedicate more space for walking to make this physical distancing easier to implement. And this physical distancing and wearing of masks, the rules which are governing this physical distancing and masks have been approached in different ways according to the country. So first, the World Health Organization recommends distancing of 1 meter in stations, but not on board vehicles, because they realize that on board vehicles is impossible. But if we look to the countries, we see that in Italy, in Spain, in France, for example, they have adopted the 1 meter value for distancing, but make it compulsory in metros and buses too. In the Netherlands or in Germany, the distancing is 1.5 meters, but it's not imposed in public transport nor the wearing of masks, but just recommended. In Japan or China, the physical distancing is not compulsory at all, but most people wear masks in public transport, though it's not imposed. So you see this diversity of rules makes it, don't make it easy to define a common approach for the sector to reassure passengers. And this imposing of physical distancing in public transport to vehicles means operating them using only 20% of their capacity. It means 8 people in a standard bus or 1 person per square meter in a metro, which is something impossible to comply with, especially during peak hours. So this is impossible to enforce with the resumption of economic and social activities in cities. The other aspect is the cleaning and disinfection of vehicles and the stations. And this is also now a number of techniques have been developed, a number of technologies also. And this is costing a lot of money. Just to give you an example, in Paris, for example, the public transport operator, they have almost more than doubled their budget for cleaning and disinfection compared to last year. Already more than doubled. So now, of course, we need to think about the post-lockdown mobility. And what's important there is that we should not, we should resist the temptation of short-term solutions, because it's in many cities or many countries, people will prefer to drive instead of using public transport, though they have a very good public transport system at their disposal. And we all know that this car traffic will come with the nuisances, and the air pollution, the accidents, the congestion will not disappear, unfortunately, with this virus. And in addition, you know, this virus is a respiratory disease, and the World Health Organization, of course, clearly said that poor air quality worsens the impact of the virus. So we need to make sure that the new normal, I would say, will not be exclusively based on cars. So this is one aspect, and it's important that we have a Green Deal compatible growth. The other aspect is that these public transport organizations, they need the financial support to survive. In some of them, like some French groups, they said we don't have enough cash to survive after the end of June, for example. So, and the governments, they have to understand that and we see in Europe that most of the government, they are supporting the airline industry or the car industry, the oil industry for some of them, but haven't decided yet to support the public transport industry, except some, like Germany, for example, they have decided, or in the UK. So it's important that the sector is supported. So this is what I wanted to say as introduction. And of course, if there are questions or clarifications, I can come back later.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's a great introduction to the global situation. I think we'll take questions for the question and answer section at the end, but
sure.
Unless anyone has questions now from the panelists, you can feel free.
Yes, if I may. I noticed there was not any mentioning regarding how people with disability or elderly people, what is their situation in that context that you have described?
Sure, of course, it's a very important question, so I didn't give details indeed. What some cities have done, they have organized special services for people with disabilities. Means that they like on-demand services for them when they need to go out, because the main instruction was to stay at home, of course. So only those who have no choice, I would say, and they have to, for example, go to hospitals or go to essential tasks. In some cities, they have provided on-demand transport and for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mazghani. We're going to move on now to, we've heard about the global situation, so to move on to Lebanon and the situation in Lebanon. I'd like to ask Mr. Nakkash to give us a little bit of historical background about the transportation system in Lebanon. As we know, the current system is mostly an informal system, but it wasn't always that way. So how did this system that we have today develop, and why so far have the efforts to make a formal transportation system not been very successful in Lebanon?
Thank you, Chadi, for inviting me, and thank you, Abby, for the introduction. When we talk about the transport system in Lebanon, whether there is COVID-19 or not, different really. Let me go back a little bit and make the statement that the transport system in Lebanon is very loosely regulated. Yani there are very few regulations that provide the legal and the operational system, background and how things should go, how things should run. Now, this might not be a big problem by itself. I'm not an advocate of extra or over-regulation. The problem is that in addition to loose regulation, there is almost a complete absence of enforcement of the very little regulatory framework we have. So we are really in a very sad situation in that case. Now, the informal transport system in Lebanon is trying to fill a gap. You know, you don't design an informal transport system. It puts itself, you know, it makes itself a reality when the people in charge, the government, everybody, they don't really do what they should be doing. They don't really provide what is required, the public services. Then somebody will have to fill that vacuum. And due to the lack of enforcement, this really makes things worse. Actually, the only regulation in Lebanon concerns this red plate issue. For somebody to operate a commercial vehicle, a vehicle that transports people for money, for a fee, has to have that license, red plate license. Now in 1994, just after Taif agreement, most of you probably don't remember that the streets of Lebanon were flooded by cars, service cars, and other kind of small vehicles that don't have the red plate. They are really private cars, but because there is unemployment and driving a car doesn't really require that much skill, so everybody rides his car and tries to provide the service. So the streets were overcrowded with all sorts of vehicles, old run-down vehicles. When the government started to take over, they started thinking what should be done. At that time, there were around 10,000 license plates. I mean, regular, legal license plates at that time. While the vehicles operating as a taxi or a shared taxi were 3, 4, 5 times that. You know, since this license plate, the red license plate, it is like a property that you can buy, sell, rent, inherit. So if very much similar to the yellow taxi of New York City, when there is a lot of demand for this kind of service and the numbers that are provided by the regulator are very few, the price of the license plate goes up. If there are a lot of people doing this service, like what was the situation in the mid-90s, the price of the license plate was rock bottom. One day I was called by the president of the CDR. He told me, I want you to come with me to the parliament because there is a discussion about what to do about those illegal people working in taxi service and things like that. So I went there, probably, I don't know, it probably must have been the Public Works Committee. They asked me what should be done. I told them now the price of the license plate is rock bottom. The right thing to do is to buy all those red license plates and go from a system where you sell the license plate to a system of licensing, because this is what's usually done all over the world. And this way you can start regulating the system. I thought I got the message right. Next day, the decision was, okay, we have 10,000 plates and now we are going to sell another 10,000 plates. And anybody who had a license plate at that time, because we are introducing people to compete with him, we give him a free license plate. So we started with 10,000, we ended up with 30,000 license plates that are operating in the system. Now, this is as far as regulation. When it comes to enforcement, situation is worse. We don't have really numbers, but the estimates provided by the Director General of Land and Maritime Transport in 2008 were as this. There are 2,000 legal buses and 1,500 additional illegal buses. Service cars are 33,000 legal and 22,000 illegal. Vans and minibuses, 4,000 legal and 11,000 illegal. So that was 10 years ago. Probably things are even worse today. This is the situation we are in. It's a lose-lose system. Those guys are not making a good living. They are driving run-down vehicles that I don't see how it could pass the vehicle inspection. All efforts to really regulate or start to regulate the system has not fruited till now. The serious issue is that currently there is a World Bank loan to start a real good BRT, bus rapid transit system that can serve, it will serve all Lebanon eventually, but to start with, it will serve the Northern Corridor, plus the city of Beirut and other parts in Beirut. Now, when you want to start something like that, the government or the regulator, I would call it the regulator, should have the power to say who is allowed to serve and provide services on certain corridors. Now, anybody with a red plate can drive anywhere in Lebanon at any time of the day, and there is no regulation that would tell him, sorry, this corridor has been, regulated, and it will be provided by one or two entities, and you cannot serve on it. If we don't solve this issue of informality, we're gonna face problems in implementing the BRT project. And any organized bus transport in Greater Beirut or other cities in Tripoli, Saida, Zahle, etc. Now, if I want to jump quickly to the recent situation, the COVID case, when there was the lockdown, those people providing those informal service were essential because there is no substitute for them. At the same time, the vehicles they drive cannot really, even now, if we want to say we want to continue or we want to permit the services to run, but with certain regulation regarding crowding, small vehicles like that cannot run economically with 1/3 seats or 1/2 seats. So we have that lose-lose situation where the people are denied any form of transport, and if at the same time the people who are operating in the informal sector are losing livelihood. So this is really a double jeopardy situation. I think enough of that as an introduction. We can cover more subtle issues during the discussion. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. I think definitely there will be some interesting discussion that will come out in the second portion. So you've raised a lot of issues that I think people will want to speak about. And now we're happy to have with us Mr. Carlos Nafaa. Now, maybe since you were able to join us, maybe you can speak a bit about the project that you have with Train. But first, perhaps just to tell us a little bit briefly about the history of the railway in Lebanon, what it was like before the Civil War, when the country had a railway, and why, in your opinion, that this is a good move for the country to move forward with trying to reconstruct the train system?
Yes, great. So, thank you very much, Chadi. Thank you very much, dear colleagues, panel, for having sharing with us this time to really lighten a candle in this darkness. So this is exactly Train, and this is exactly our NGO that started in 2005 and got the license number at 2010. The first train is symbolic for our heritage, and the second train is a symbol of our future. So Lebanon, in the geopolitics and geoeconomy, have a very, very interesting place. It was, and hope it can keep his identity and his place to bridging North and Africa and southern part of Europe to the east. And the story starts 1887 when there were many countries competing to connect this area to Damascus, and the British and the French at that time, they were competing in different way and trying to convince and advocate with the Ottoman Empire to give them the opportunity to open the lines between the port of Haifa and port of Beirut. And this is what happened in 4th August 1895 when the first official trip started from Beirut port and from Mar Mikhail passenger train station in Beirut direction Damascus, and connected Damascus in 8 hours. And this was booming Beirut from 4,000 inhabitants in 10 years. Lebanon actually still have the right of way between Beirut and Damascus, between Rayak in the middle of Bekaa to Homs, and between Tripoli and Homs, and between Haifa and Tripoli. So as you can see, we have 403 kilometers. This is 403 kilometers. We still have them. Of course, they have a lot of damage. They need to be repaired. They need to be developed. But this is very important because any project, and Dr. Tamam Nakkash, I think he knows better than us, the main difficulty in all development project and transportation, it's the real estate. So the big budget is to buy the land and to own it. So here we don't need to buy the land. The land is here. The right of way is here. We still have it. And we have 403 kilometers, is nearly covering the country and connecting the country from the south to the north, from Beirut to the inner Lebanon to Bekaa. And this is a big opportunity. What we are trying to do, we are trying right now at our NGO to advocate and to build a network and we are lobbying with a lot of policymakers. And when we say policymaker, in our definition, it is the citizen and the policymaker at political level. So on both levels. So that's why we are creating awareness campaign and awareness activity. And COVID-19, of course, it changed our approach to the citizen to create the awareness of public transportation and common transportation, and to because we believe that from the 90s till now, all the public transportation approaches has been approached and tackled by problem and solution. We didn't have a holistic approach, a holistic view. So we didn't connect pedestrian rights, bicycle rights, car rights, buses, railways, sea, water transportation. If we can, we have 210 kilometers. We have 300 days of sunny days. We can use also our coastal water side. So no government, no bodies, technical body had a holistic plan So like we were just a few minutes before hearing that there is a project of BRT, bus rapid transfer. But the big question, it's a bus stopping each 800 meter. So it's not anymore rapid transfer. So, and it is also only on the northern corridor. So there is no holistic approach, and is not taking care about the future railway or the old railway train station, and is not taking care about the inner cities, because there is inner cities they are developed, and also they having their own traffic system, and it's all already blocked, and it's not taking care how people can reach from inner city to outside to where the bus rapid transfer tracks will be installed. So it does not taking care of the bicycle access, the special needs people access, and so on and so forth. So the problem with the goodwill is there. Everybody have goodwill. All engineering houses and management houses and the consultancy houses, they have the goodwill. But the problem, the government do not have a vision, and out of this vision to have a connected transportation, having influence on the economy, on the urbanism. So they proposing like this BRT to be stopped in Tabarja, northern part of Beirut. And what is Tabarja in urbanism? It's agriculture field. So who's coming from Tripoli, he will stop. He will stop where? In agriculture field to switch to Beirut via buses. So that means we will destroy the agricultural field of Tabarja, and the seaside, it is touristic, and it will be developed the urbanism effect. It will be, it's not calculated, it will be damaged. So all projects are nice, all projects are good, but we don't have a strategic connected transportation approach. We are not connecting those buses or trains or cars to the seaside, to the touristic port. So if we will have ferry boat coming from Cyprus to Juni port, because there is a plan and there is development for Juni touristic port. If we will have a ferry boat holding 1,000 tourists, 1,000 persons, how they can manage to go out in a small city like Juni, to go out, and Abby, you know Juni, how small it is, how they can go out from this harbor, from this touristic harbor, with which mean of transportation? If they will get the bus rapid transfer, there is no connection to the harbor. So the tourists, they will not get access to the bus rapid transfer. The tourists, they will not get access to feeder buses. The tourists do not have a renting car system. So the problem, all the existing projects, they are disconnected projects. It's really, I don't have any kind of problem with any kind of idea or project of transportation. But what we are worried about at the train, it's all the system do not have a backbone, and it is not connected to each other. And we believe, as an NGO, as train, that the railway, it is the backbone of transportation, and it can play a role to reconnect Lebanon. The people, they are not knowing each other. The people in the south, if right now I'm in Akkar, I'm 5 minutes to the Syrian border. Moving to Beirut, not to Bint Jbeil, to the south, just moving to the midway, to the Beirut. It took me, with normal traffic, 3.5 hours, with only for 134 kilometers. It took me 3.5 hours with my car, with the small shuttle, with the small vanette, small bus. It will take me 4 hours. It is unfair. So it is money losing, it's time losing, production time losing, it's health commuting, it's destroying our mental health, and destroying the identity of the Lebanese. So the people in Akkar, in the north, they don't know at all the people in the south. The youth in the south, they have they can have their own imagination about people in the north. We don't know each other. So we believe that a railway could be, and it is the backbone of transportation, and out of a railway system, a well-studied railway system, to be a connected railway system to buses, to feeder system, to pedestrian, to bicycle, and so on, and even to tourism, to port, to airport. We don't have. We have daily. Last year we had daily 20. The peak trip at Beirut port. We had 28,000 passengers at Beirut airport in a day. 28,000 passengers, and buses, they are not allowed to go there. And we don't have buses at the airport. We don't have railway at the airport. You need to have a taxi. You need to have a car. Can you imagine in one day? That means in 1 hour, nearly 1,000 cars going to the airport. What type of traffic and disturbance can create into the city? So we planned and we offered on last year at August 30 from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Tripoli. We presented and we offered our government for free as a donation the master plan for a national railway system, connecting the Beirut port, Beirut airport, connecting all the coastal ports, the touristic one and the cargo one, connecting the potential airport in Bekaa and in Akkar. The military one right now, but we were proposing to be connected also to railway, connecting the south to the north, reconnecting Beirut to Bekaa via tunnel to have an express trip of 12 minutes to reach Bekaa, and so on. And we developed even this this master plan with a team of volunteers from engineer and urban planner. And also we discussed it with many team inside Lebanon and outside Lebanon. We benefit from our Lebanese diaspora. You know, we have Lebanese working in different places in the world, in urbanism houses and in railway companies, and we benefit from the brainstorming this master plan. And we want to publish a new version of it. We develop it and we make it much better and connected much better to other means of transportation. And we can see that it could be developed into phases. So also we developed a phases plan to be realistic. And also right now we have a lot of fears. We have serious fears that our negotiator team with the IMF, they are proposing to sell the right of way. Since it is 403 kilometers, it is nearly 3.8% of the Lebanese territory. They estimated that they can sell it with 70 billion US dollar. And this will be a crime, because it will be like killing our future economy, killing our future means of transportation, killing our exit, our hope to have a solution for transportation. And what is important, that many companies out of our advocacy, many European company and Chinese companies, they were visiting in 2018 our country, and they visited the minister of transportation and the policymaker and the investors. And they were really interested in our master plan, because we phase it, as I just said, into phases. So and nearly European and Chinese, they were convinced to start from Damour to Byblos to connect the northern and southern part of the greater Beirut as a phase one. And in parallel, the Chinese, they were more eager to connect Tripoli to Homs. Of course, they want to connect their one road, one belt plan to Tripoli. This is their aim. So many investors, international investors, also they have been visiting. We were connecting them, inviting them to Beirut. They visit our government, even they visit the former Prime Minister Hariri. And we were trying to push, convincing the policymaker to adopt any kind of strategic approach of transportation. So, of course, we are lobbying and advocating for railway, but we cannot see the railway as a solution alone. It should be connected to a general plan and the strategic plan for transportation. Thank you very much. This is what I can say.
Thank you, Carlos. And I'm sure everyone will want to discuss more of this this plan during the next session when we'll open it up for discussion. So for now, let's move to Ms. Sylvana. And actually, you touched on this point that because there's not a holistic plan or a holistic system, there are many things that are left out, including the needs of people with special needs or disabilities. So if you can just tell us a bit more about the mobility issues that people with disabilities are facing in Lebanon now, that would be great.
Well, first of all, people with disability in Lebanon make 15% of the population, and this is according to the World Bank and WHO organization. You can add to them, to this group, also the elderly group. People with who are getting older, they also do need facilities and barrier-free environment. So if we look at disability group and the elderly group, and if we realize that they make a huge part of society, we will know that we need to make all of our policy, all of our systems and programs inclusive, because otherwise this is going to make us lose also in economy, because it's a loss when you are not inclusive. It's a loss when you are not ready to receive everyone. So Lebanon already had a huge challenge regarding accessibility. And when we talk about mobility, we cannot talk about mobility without talking also about environment and accessible environment. We cannot also talk about mobility without touching the type of management and whether the management, the public administration is equipped to manage diversity or no. Because without a vision, without standards, without laws, you will not go far. So regarding laws, in Lebanon there is a law 220 that was issued in year 2000. According to this law, people with disabilities have right to accessible transportation, accessible environment, and accessible housing. Now, actually this month, it is 20 years already. And the 20 years have passed. Not much has happened. We still are likely to access to have less access to public transportation, nor to private transportation. We only have a few, maybe 1 or 2 taxi in Lebanon who have a few cars accessible, like Allo Taxi and Charbel Taxi, but these are they have very limited resource services around providing service for transferring people with disability. Not to include also the airport. The airport itself is another story, and if you want to go to the airport, if you are traveling, we still face huge problems whenever we travel. But we also were relying on the international convention, the CRPD for people with disabilities, that was that came to life since 14 years. And I think most of the countries in the world have ratified this convention. Lebanon hasn't yet ratified. Lebanon signed, but not ratified. I think Lebanon is one of 12 countries, the only 12 countries that haven't yet ratified. So people with disability already face many challenges whenever we want to move from one place to another. We have to take private transportation if we work, and this means if a person doesn't have his or her own car, it's a big problem, and actually many of us were not able to go to school or to work or to socialize because of inaccessible mobility systems. Well, we have tried to do our part as the Lebanese Union for People with Physical Disability. We have supported the Directory of Transportation, I think 6 years ago, when they were talking about Greater Beirut Plan. So once we heard about this plan, we offered our support. We gave them, we developed the whole measures and criteria and everything that it might need to make this plan an inclusive plan. For example, to look at the bus specification, at the bus station specification, at the management, at the level, how people should have capacity to know how to manage services for everyone, including people with disability. We also did the plan even for the accessible environment, because it's not enough to talk about the vehicle system. You need also to look at the environment, at the bus stations, at the system of management, and last but not least, also the information. If someone who is visually impaired and is using a bus, how he or she should know if they have reached their destination or no. Or people with intellectual disabilities who need to simplify the information for them, and also deaf people who need to have technology to be used to also to have proper communication. And to make all this, all this also is supposed to be happening if we look at the SDGs. SDGs also talk about smart cities, inclusive cities, and also talk about how to eradicate poverty. Eradicating poverty and hunger means that you need to think inclusive and act inclusive. To reach that stage, we need also people who are in different places, like the experts, the universities, also to start to encourage developing researches and models of inclusion, mainly for the MENA region here, because in the MENA region we still lack for basic information to start this off. And I notice now, listening to the speakers, as you know, when the component of disability is not present, nobody notices. So, and this will delay the reaching for the solution. What is your abbreviation? UITP can play a huge role in encouraging every country to start putting measures and progressive plans so that people can really start making the transit into inclusive mobility system. And I have to repeat again, when I talk about people with disability, I'm talking about everyone. Part of them are now disabled, and the other part will be disabled later on as they get on with their life, because no capacity stays the same, and changing the capacities should not be an excuse to leave people behind. Everyone, with whatever capacity we have the right to live in dignity and equally. Now, COVID-19 has made situation even much worse. Already we have limited choices. Now we have heard on all TVs how COVID-19 attacks most of all elderly people and people with disability. But in the same time, we didn't see any provisions. We didn't hear about any provisions that makes life easy for these people. Suppose someone want to go to work or to hospital or to school or wherever, or people who are living alone and they need to go out to get their groceries and everything. It is really a nightmare, and we cannot allow for this to continue. We need to learn, and I think COVID-19 has taught everyone a lesson. We all have seen how systems and regimes need to be reviewed, and all of them need to go back to be human-centered. And we saw how weak our systems are. So let's take this opportunity and try to make sure that the new plans are not really going to leave no one behind, but this will imply intensive contributions from everyone, because we are starting from zero. We need to work on different levels, different battles. Like when I mentioned Beirut Greater Plan, we had to do a criteria for law building, criteria for external environment, standards for transportation, standards for service providing. But then again, we need to operate all this and activate all this. We need to put a long-term strategy that takes us to that end. And only then we can guarantee that society can really be living in harmony and in peace. Thank you. I stop here.
Thank you, Sylvana. You raised a lot of very good points, and I think this is a good transition actually to Chadi. So we've talked about some of the issues that are present in the existing system in Lebanon, but your work, you've really focused on trying to work within the system that's there to make it better for the riders and for the drivers. So can you talk about that a bit, and also maybe focus a little bit on the situation with the COVID-19, how that has impacted the drivers and riders in the existing system?
Okay. Hello all. First, I want to thank all the panelists to join us today and all the attendees. What happened with COVID-19, it make things more visible for us. And it's not an issue only for Lebanon, it's a worldwide issue, how we don't get aware of people left behind. We don't see it in our life till a crisis happens, or till an NGO or an organization try to work on a group of people who are left behind. So I think what COVID-19 done to make things more visible and we are more aware about it, and they exist before. like the informal system in Lebanon. It exists, and not a lot of people were not aware about it, not seeing it, not using it, and also refusing it. So, and that's what BASMA project, yani, what tried to do is to make the system more visible and change the communication, the negative or stigma. We talk about it, and it's, yeah, for us the solution is to accept what we have and try to work with it and make some incremental changes with the existing, with respecting the existing operator, the rider, as a participatory approach for all. We respect all, يعني, expert and designer and engineer for doing doing planning for transportation, but we must take care of the existing system and how we will integrate it in any new plan or future plan. As I think in the red plate in Lebanon, like Dr. Nakkash said, it's not a license. It's and every person who have a red plate, he built his whole life on it. So it's livelihood, his security, health, because a lot of driver buy or work in this field because they want security, health. So it provides this. It can be every red plate can be like a company or small company who at some time I call it they are a social entrepreneur. Every driver on a bus line or a taxi line, because he is infecting a lot of lives. He take people to their schools, to their works, to their university, and at the same time he's doing this impact on people's lives. So we must think how we could integrate the system in any future. So that's what we can learn from COVID, and it's not it's a worldwide issue to be aware of all people. Not we have with us people with disability, we have refugees, we have a lot of groups. We must work with them and try to enhance their lives. The system in Lebanon reflects a lot of things about the operator and the groups that use it, and also about the economic situation. So when you don't have a lot of work in the economy, a lot of people go and work as drivers. So that's why you have irregulated a number of plates that are working in Lebanon, because they don't have another option. So it's related to other things in the economy. So it's a result. So the informal system reflect a lot of results in Lebanon. So we have the BRT also. We like Dr. Nakkash speak about it. So it's a new system, and we have the informal system, how they will be integrated. It's a big questions for us for the future, how we can integrate it in a manner that will respect all those operators in the system. So we have learned from other cities where the BRT happened and the informal systems there, and it was not a successful story there. So we must learn from other cities. We see the system a fill gapper. So as Lebanon, we have only now 25 to 30 buses. So all the informal system, the coverage of the system is informal. So he is serving all people. So it's based on the demand. So it's organic. So even with COVID-19, the government took the decision to shut it down without thinking about the essential worker that work in that time. So they left it also behind. So, and the minister who talked about the system, he took it's a poor, it's system for poor. So how we think, a government that think a system, public transportation system can, it's only for poor. And if it is right for poor, what you did for them more, because they are poor, they need more attention or more help. After we open partially, when we open, they put some restriction. So they demand a third of a bus seats to be ride, and also half for a van, and without giving any مساعدات for them. So in every country in the world, they give bailout for a lot of companies. Till now, they give only for 400,000 Lebanese lira for drivers. Until now, they did not get it. So how will they survive? Yeah. So now also in Lebanon, we are living two crises, the financial crisis and the COVID crisis. So how the system will survive this crisis? So I think the government must find a way, and also municipalities, we think, can play a role in supporting those systems, because mobility in Lebanon in a couple of years, we have a big issue with that, because we cannot import the petrol, and it will be much higher prices. So a lot of people will go to another mode, so to buses, to bicycle also. So I think we must think more about this. Also, for me, it's enough. I think I want to ask Mr. Mohammad about the informal working group, the working group for informality that UITP headed, if he can explain more about it and it worked, please.
Shall I do it now? Oh, sorry.
Please.
Shall I do it now? Shall I reply?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe before replying to the question about informal transport, I would like to mention to Mrs. Sylvana that, of course, UITP is takes the question of not just handicapped people, but people with reduced mobility in general. We take it very seriously, and we work on that. And I just shared on the chat box a document that we have produced with Handicap International about some recommendations on how to make public transport more accessible for people with reduced mobility. And what is good is that if systems are accessible for people with reduced mobility, they will be good for everyone. And so that should be the approach, and this is the approach we promote at UITP. Regarding informal transport, yes, UITP has a group on informal transport. This group gathers operators of informal transport, but also authorities, regulators, because informal transport is suffering from a lack of regulations. So first, I would like to say that informal transport is the key mobility providers in many cities in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, in Turkey, in Latin America. For example, in some countries, it represents 90% of the mobility market. And during this COVID-19 crisis, the sector was badly impacted, of course, due to the decline in ridership and to the lockdown. And most of the players of this informal transport players depend on fare box revenue to survive. They don't have any subsidy, they don't have any support coming from the government, unfortunately. So they cannot afford to reduce their activities. And during the crisis, we have seen some governments allowing the operators to increase their ticket prices by 50 to 100% to fill the revenue gap, and also to make it possible to maintain some distancing. In some other countries, like in India, Philippines, in Mexico, in Turkey, the authorities are giving direct or indirect benefits to the operators in form of cash, fuel subsidy, or relaxations on some of the statutory fees. I think the main issue with this informal transport is how to. The main challenge is how to make the informal formal, how to regulate, how to organize this market. And maybe, and since I was listening about the project to introduce BRT in Beirut, and this is what has been done in Istanbul or in Johannesburg or in Cape Town, is that when they introduced the BRT, they seized the opportunity to regulate and to organize the informal transport sector and to make it more, because if it is organized, it means it is safer. The quality of service will be improved. The punctuality will be improved. The prices will be controlled, and so it's good for everyone, for the users and for the operators, because the operators are also protected from wild competition coming from non-organized operators. So and listening also to the different contributions of the speakers, I think the problem is the problem of regulation and organization. Lebanon is a country with a high density of population, and Beirut is a big city with a high density of population. And when I look to the Netherlands or I look to Denmark, which are countries of maybe similar size and high density, they have authorities which are transport authority which is covering the whole country, not city by city. A transport authority that could make easy the integration of the different modes of transport, and which can manage these projects and these investments projects in a coordinated way, because this is what is important when you are I'd say rebuilding the transport system. It's how to make it in a coordinated way and not to lose and make some economy of scale in a country like Lebanon. I think this is important to have an umbrella authority which is in charge of organizing, regulating, and coordinating the investments in public transport. Thank you.
Abby, may I ask Mr. Mohammad a question before you move?
Yeah. Now we want to move into the open discussion period anyway, so you can feel free to ask questions and discuss.
My question is, since Lebanon and the region, usually when we want to start the process of inclusion, we have many challenges, and having a pilot project will be always useful. So I was wondering if UITP can, based on the international partnership and collaboration, if they might be able to think of a macro project where it can involve different Arab countries to come together to start the process of building the structure for how to make this transition. Because unless we have international support, whether for resources or for financing, disability issues always is not, disability rights is not a priority usually for decision makers. And this is related still to the old thinking system. So unless we have a push a positive push happening that will enable everyone to see the benefit of doing this transition. It's going to take long time to start this. So
sure. I understand. I understand. So UITP in itself doesn't fund projects. We don't fund projects. We are ourselves beneficiaries of some fundings. But
no, sorry, I know. I'm saying that a project where you bring more than one, like donors, yourself, and so on.
Exactly.
But you are bringing the expertise and the know-how. Yeah.
Sure. This is what I want to say. I started by saying we are not a donor ourselves, but of course we work with donors, and maybe this is something, a question we can raise to them to try to identify an initiative in this field and see how we can work in this field. I would like to mention something. When I look to other countries or countries who are advanced in the way they deal with the question of people with reduced mobility, or in the way of countries who are much more inclusive in their approach, they have a ministry for that. They have at least a directorate for that. And you know, the role you are playing here in this session by reminding us of the importance of the handicapped and people with reduced mobility. This ministry is also the role of this ministry to remind the government each time they discuss a project, each time they have a new investment, to include this component in the project. And I don't know if this kind of ministry exists in Lebanon, or this kind of directorate exists in Lebanon, because you know, if this question is left in the hands of the NGOs only, of course it's good, and it's good to have NGOs raising the awareness. But the NGOs, they have a limited resources. They can, as you said, they can maybe identify a pilot project, or they can have some initiatives one day to promote the cause of handicapped people, but they cannot lead themselves the investments. And so I think if lobbying for having this kind of representation at the governmental level is very, very important, is essential. But in the meantime, as you said, it's important to have some initiatives, and if we can help to support this kind of initiatives, we will do it.
Great, thanks. I think Mr. Nakkash needs to go, and he had something he wanted to add. So then after that, we can continue with this discussion if you like.
Thank you, Abby. I want to thank all the presentations. Because I am committed to another meeting, I have to leave you soon. I want to thank Sylvana for a very good and excellent presentation on the issue of accessibility. Our problem here is not limited to people with impaired mobility. Even people who have no impairment in mobility have a problem in Beirut and other Lebanese cities, because sidewalks are not really safe to walk. They are blocked by vehicles, they are blocked by fixed objects. My ambitions as a transport system expert is to start from that level, the level of making walking possible in the city in a safe manner. And when it's safe for people who can walk, it should be safe for people who are on a wheelchair or something like that. We all know, and our ambitions are high, but we have to be realistic. We have really to bring down our ambitions to a realistic level. We have to see the big picture and how we like it to be, and start implementing them, you know, bit by bit, and probably have the attitude of, let us take something and ask, khudh wa talib. Anything that we can take, we should take without stopping from asking for something better. As Mr. Mazghani said, the BRT system, this project is a good opportunity to get so many things integrated with it, in terms of regulation, in terms of walkability, in terms of cycles, in terms of we have to use it as a central project and to build around it all the other needs. As transport, advocates of public transport, we shouldn't lock ourselves into a specific mode and say, this is the best mode. Every mode has a role to play, and we have to get that mixture that brings the total, that completes the entire picture in the best way. And really, with the problems we have in Lebanon now, outside the transport sector, maybe we are not really in a very bad situation as far as transport, because we are facing real challenging issues that touch every aspect of our life. Thank you for this opportunity, and I have to tell you goodbye because I have to go to another meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mazghani just told me he also needs to go at 11:40. So if there's another comment that you'd like to add or something you'd like to touch on from the discussion before you have to leave.
Thank you, and sorry for leaving the discussion now, but unfortunately I have another meeting, and I just wanted to say that, and also to build on what Dr. Tamam said, is that we tend to, when we think about public transport or about transport and mobility in general, we tend to speak about infrastructure, about systems, about vehicles, and we don't think people. We don't approach the issue from the people expectations.
May I add something?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. In last month, our parliament voted and agreed to allow the government to start a project under a BOT scheme, build, operate, and transfer, to open a tunnel for vehicles between Beirut and Bekaa. So, and this type of I like to name it mushrooms project and mushroom activities. Talib bil mawjood, like just Dr. Nakkash said. This is what complicate, in my opinion, the problem of Lebanon and complicate the economical problem and social problem and transport problem. So we don't have, nobody know if they have feasibility study behind. We ask for feasibility study, we ask the Minister of Transportation, the former one, there is no feasibility study. They just voted for BOT project, for a tunnel project, for vehicle project between Beirut and Bekaa without any studies, without any environmental impact study, without any economical study, not even with the participatory approach. And the same happened with BOT and other projects. Somebody bring a good idea, a copy-paste idea from Istanbul, from Jordan, from wherever in the world, and they convinced the donors and to have a fund like the World Bank and EU and other, and they just apply it in our government. And then what we are doing is just a layer after another. We are building a layer of problems. And if really we need to rebuild Lebanon in a new way, in a way where each and every project should take in consideration that we are talking about people, about citizens. We are not talking about vehicles. We are not talking about construction investors. We are talking about people needs, citizen need. And then from this point, from this basement, the story should start. So we should look in participatory approach what the people of Bekaa want to have, what the people of Tripoli want to have, the people of the north, of the south, wherever want to have. And then out of the people need, we can start tailor-making our projects, tailor-making our strategy. We cannot just copy-paste a success story in Istanbul that it will never be a success story elsewhere. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mohammad just messaged me. He had a connection problem and he had to go to his next meeting. So maybe Chadi and Sylvana, if you have any last comments that you'd like to make, and then we can answer the one question we have in the Q&A.
Okay. Sylvana, do you have?
Just quickly, I think this session has been a very important start. I think we can take this collaboration further, and we can build on it to really at least support each other in the process. For example, what was Mr. Carlos saying. I think we should do some advocacy and lobbying around that together. So also تجود بالموجود يعني, but we need to collaborate. And I want to congratulate Riders' Rights for organizing this important session. And I want to say
Great. Thank you for joining. Chadi, do you have any points that you'd like to mention from the discussion? Chadi?
Hello.
There he is.
Okay, sorry, I lost the connection. So I want to say this, two things about the rights of mobility. So also in Lebanon, the refugees cannot go outside the campus. So we have also foreign worker or a migrant worker. Also, their salaries cannot let them to go outside the region they live. So they live 20, 25 years in the same region. They don't know the whole country. So I think the mobility is beyond the system. It's beyond a collective knowledge, a collective right that we must work and we must together stand as in solidarity with all the people who are left behind. So that's the question, the idea I want to say. And also I want to thank all the participants who was with us, for the expert who left. And also I want also to say, Chain Effect, it's an NGO that is working on cycling, promoting cycling. They could not join us because of time difference. So maybe later they also can join, and we talk about the intersectionality of modes of transportation more and more. And also we did make a campaign called Bus Line Heroes that support the bus driver in the period of coronavirus, and also we will work to support them after the coronavirus, post-coronavirus, because they need it, the driver and the rider, the whole system. So we are working on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Chadi and Jad, for organizing this webinar. I see we have one question in the Q&A, so I'll just read that and see if any of you would like to jump in and answer it. So we have a question from Nathaniel. He's asking, how is Lebanon working towards achieving the goal of a smart city? To address Sylvana's concerns on making public transport more accessible, many countries, including Singapore, where I come from, have leveraged on technology to resolve issues. But in the case of reduced technological adoption, I suggest for the passengers with disabilities to sit near the driver so he or she can be alerted when reaching the destination. Of course, we have the COVID-19 issue, but there's no doubt that in order to assist the disabled, drivers will still have to come in contact with such passengers. So maybe Sylvana, you can respond to that, or if anyone else has thoughts.
Yes, what can I say? I thank the person who responded, but I still think we need to, based on the international programs existing now that is bringing everyone together One of them is smart cities, one of them inclusive cities, one of them is international collaboration. We should use all this to try and see how we can exchange on one level expertise and information and collaborate together to start the spot of inclusion and make it wider day by day. That's what I want to remind everyone, we're talking about people, like many of you have already said. We're talking about people's life. It makes a big change if we have inclusive transportation system. It can really take us to very nice living and calm living. And if we don't have it, we're more and more going into poverty, and I don't want to name the whole list of negative impact of not having accessible transportation and inclusive transportation, and most of all, green transportation system. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Despite the technical difficulties, I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and hopefully the discussion will continue. I put in the chat panel, there's an email for riders' rights. So if people have other questions, they can also email, and Chadi or somebody else from the team will follow up with them. So really, thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We miss you all.
Regards to Akkar also.
وصل.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.